this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now. You call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
This Sunday, iHeartRadio brings you live to Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara for the Super Bowl 60 tailgate concert, presented by NetApp. It's the ultimate pregame party, featuring an exclusive performance from Teddy Swims. Your front row experience will be on iHeartRadio stations across the country and the free iHeartRadio app this Sunday at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. Then, after the concert, tune in to the Super Bowl 60 pregame show on NBC.
This is Andrea Gunning from Betrayal. Most wellness routines fail somewhere between day one motivation and where did I put that powder? That's where Grunes comes in. Grunes packs over 20 vitamins and minerals, greens, and prebiotics into a snack pack of tiny, delicious gummies. No powders, no pills. Just a simple way to support your gut health, beauty, energy, immunity, recovery, and cognition. Plus, the ingredients in Grunes are backed by over 35,000 research publications. It's a convenient, comprehensive formula designed for real life. Get up to 52% off with the code BETRAYAL at Grunes.co. That's code BETRAYAL at GRUNS.co.
Why have I asked my HVAC guy I found on Angie.com to change my grandpa's trachea tube? Because I was so amazed by how quickly he replaced our air ducts. I knew I could trust him to change Pop-Pop's tube while I was on vacation.
Make it quick, young man.
Aw, see? Pop-Pop trusts you.
I think we should call a doctor.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. You know, over the course of my career as a medical legal death investigator in Atlanta and New Orleans, I've had many people that have come up to me and asked me, what's the most bizarre case that you've ever heard of? Well, today I want to tell you about one of those cases. It's a case I've known about for some time. It's a case involving the murder of Andre Daigle in New Orleans. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. Joining me today is my good friend Jackie Howard, executive producer of Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. Jackie, tell us about Andre's death.
27-year-old Andre Daigle decides to go out to a bar after a long week of work. The 27-year-old shoots some pool and starts a flirtation with a woman at the bar. As the night progresses, so does the flirtation, and the woman invites Daigle back to her apartment. But what Daigle does not know is that she is a lure. She is a plant intending to bring a person, not necessarily Daigle, but a man, back to the apartment for her boyfriend and his friend to kill. After they get to the apartment, Daigle passes out because of the alcohol that he has consumed. And at that time, two men come out of the bedroom and begin the process of murdering Daigle. So this is a case that is indeed bizarre, but it's not just a case that you've heard about. You worked this case, Joe.
Yeah, I did. This was literally right at the beginning of my career when dinosaurs roamed the earth. And what's really interesting, it wasn't just me. It was a bevy of investigators. And at the end, this case wound up involving about 5 different jurisdictions. But, you know, we were discussing Andre Daigle's death, and it was kind of bizarre. This person that essentially lured him in was a young lady by the name of Thelma Horn. And she resided with these 2 other fellows. One guy's name is Michael Phillips, who was her boyfriend. He's only about 21 years old. And then you got this old, crusty ex-con, and I say old and kind of with a grin. He's only 24. His name was Charles Gervais. And he had kind of lured both Phillips and Horn into this interesting little triumvirate of theirs. They had designs on becoming members of organized crime. And at the time of Andre's killing, their goal was not just to see what it would be like, or if they could, in fact, kill a man, but their goal was also to prove how tough they were. Because not only were they going to demonstrate that they could commit a homicide, and I'm talking about it's up there in my cases with its level of brutality and callousness, because, you know, Andre was just random. They set out to specifically pick a man to do this to. It had to be a man because, keep in mind, as we'd mentioned, Thelma was the bait. She went in just trying to attract someone, and boy, she took him hook, line, and sinker. They left that bar that night, Mitchell's Lounge in Kenner, Louisiana. They left that bar that night in his truck, and she had just merely said, "Hey, why don't we go for a drive?" And the next thing you know, they both wound up at her apartment. And, you know, you can imagine, I mean, he's attracted to her. She's showing interest in him, been buying beers. He's had a few. And of course, he gets back to the apartment, and the way the story kind of spun out was that she had told him, "Look, I've got a friend in the back bedroom I've got to go check on," and goes back there to check on him. And the next thing you know, he's passed out on the sofa. And very soon thereafter, hell followed.
Michael Phillips and Charles Gervais, as you said, set out to kill someone, anyone, a random person. But what they found out, that it wasn't as easy as they thought it was going to be. They ended up using several methods to kill Andre. They started out with a claw hammer. Can you paint a picture for me of what a claw hammer is, Joe?
A claw hammer is just a standard carpenter's hammer, you know, and there's various sizes of these things. You know, they have different weights to them. People might be familiar with something that's called a finishing hammer, which tends to be a bit heavier. Use it for framing houses and for doing all manner of things, but it's got a hook on the back of it, you know, the 2 claws, 2 prongs that make up a claw to pull nails out with. And of course, it's got the blunted end that you drive nails with. And over the course of my career, I've seen any number of injuries that result from an attack with a hammer. And you just don't have those surfaces. You know, if you think about looking down the long axis of a hammer, the first thing you think about is that the end of it, that's about the size of, say, in between the size of a diameter between the size of a nickel and a quarter. Okay, depending upon the size of the hammer, and it's blunted. It's got a smooth surface, and then it's got these little rounded edges. But then the nasty bits are where the claw is. You know, you got these 2 protruding sharp edges that leave, when you strike with those, they leave very definitive marks behind. So you won't just get like a solid blunt force contusion that's left behind, say, for instance, if you strike somebody with the blunted end, you'll get these really nasty injuries that are what are referred to as penetrative injuries, because those little claws, those little prongs, they actually act as incising instruments where they're digging in. It's almost like bilateral stab wounds. And to even make this further quite ghastly is that when that hammer is dug in with the claw aspect of it, it has to be retrieved and pulled out, and it's leveraged generally by lifting it. So anything that's caught beneath the surface of the skin, any kind of muscle, any kind of connective tissue, bone even, if you strike it, as you're pulling that thing out in this fevered moment, you can take some of that with you. So it's a very horrible type of death, as you can imagine. I remember seeing Andre's body. I'd gone to the morgue, and the autopsy was actually done in the Orleans Parish morgue under the direction of Dr. McGarry. That was, he's deceased now, but he was the forensic pathologist that conducted the examination at the old coroner's office in New Orleans, which actually happened to be in the basement of the courthouse. And the room was filled with people because there were so many jurisdictions involved in this case. And this examination took quite some time. It was, the injuries were quite extensive.
I'm going to make a very easy assumption, Joe. What you're telling me is these men used both ends of that hammer on Andre.
Yeah, that would be the case. And it's further complicated by this fact. His body had been down. It had been down for a while. And he, given the fact that, that his body was eventually found outdoors in very hostile environment. And when I say hostile, I'm talking about the environment itself. Remember, South Louisiana is so very hot, particularly this time of year. His body was decomposed to the point where, you could still appreciate the injuries. Don't get me wrong. It's not like his remains are skeletonized or anything. However, it's compromised to the point where McGarry could not make a determination as to the exact number of injuries, but he opined at the time that he thought that it was at least 10 blunt force injuries. And you're going to have a mix of these when you're talking about a hammer. And one of the fascinating things about someone being attacked with so-called claw hammer is that you've got all of these surfaces that are involved. And, we have the leading surface that most people think about with a hammer, that literally knocks nails through wood or any other kind of surface. And then you have the claw side that's used to pull out nails, for instance, or break things apart. But then you have sides as well that are very linear. And, if you think about the profile of, say, that claw, it's got a curved shape. And I've seen many times where people will twist the hammer in their hands and hit people literally with the side of the hammer, if you can imagine that. And they'll have these weird arcing shaped insults, contused areas over the, and you'll get like what we refer to as kind of a commingling of injuries. So you'll see the kind of coin shape where the hammer strike takes place. Then you can see the claws that are penetrating. And then you can see the kind of arcing shape that's left behind by the side profile of the hammer. It really takes a long time to kind of make your way through these injuries. And when you begin to think about, you throw decomposition artifact in on top of that, and the body's changing colors and all these sorts of things, you really have to be careful when you're trying to interpret these things, because you don't know what's exactly going on. But the interesting thing about it, I think, is that dependent upon how the hammer itself is oriented, you can kind of begin to tell a story about the movements of the perpetrator, and sometimes even the movements or reactions of the victim as they're being struck.
Joe, you mentioned blunt force injuries, but wouldn't if you have a claw hammer and both sides of the hammer is being used, you would not only have blunt force injuries, but wouldn't you have sharp force injuries too?
Jackie, have you been studying in our off time Sounds like you have, man. I'll tell you what. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a great pickup because, when we talk about this on body bags, don't we? When you've got blunt force and you think about, kind of the leading coin-shaped impact area, that's not going to break the surface of the skin most of the time. Now it will. If you strike, say, for instance, on somebody's shoulder blade, you can tear the skin, and that's what's called a laceration. Lacerations are related to blunt force trauma. That's a ripping of the skin. But with sharp force, remember, think about that claw as it's leading, okay? Those edges along those prongs are very sharp. So you have a sharp force injury. And what do we talk about when we talk about sharp force? Well, we talk about stab wounds, where people are actually stabbed with a knife. We have chopping wounds, which can look like a machete or an axe. And you have slices where if you think about the leading edge of the knife, like if someone takes a steak knife and drags it through somebody's hand, demonstrating defensive injuries. So there's a whole category of sharp force injuries. And of course, the hammer with a claw would certainly fit into that category as well.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
This Sunday, iHeartRadio brings you live to Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara for the Super Bowl 60 tailgate concert, presented by NetApp. It's the ultimate pregame party, featuring an exclusive performance from Teddy Swims. Your front row experience will be on iHeartRadio stations across the country and the free iHeartRadio app this Sunday at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. Then, after the concert, tune in to the Super Bowl 60 pregame show on NBC.
Now I'd like to introduce you to Meaningful Beauty, the famed skincare brand created by iconic supermodel Cindy Crawford. It's her secret to absolutely gorgeous skin. Meaningful Beauty makes powerful and effective skincare simple, and it's loved by millions of women. It's formulated for all ages and all skin tones and types, and it's designed to work as a complete skincare system, leaving your skin feeling soft, smooth, and nourished. I recommend starting with Cindy's full regimen, which contains all 5 of her best-selling products, including the amazing youth-activating Melon Serum. This next-generation serum has the power of melon leaf stem cell technology. It's melon leaf stem cells encapsulated for freshness and released onto the skin to support a visible reduction in the appearance of wrinkles. With thousands of glowing 5-star reviews, why not give it a try? Subscribe today and you can get the amazing Meaningful Beauty system for just $49.95. That includes our introductory 5-piece system, free gifts, free shipping, and a 60-day money-back guarantee. All of that available at meaningfulbeauty.com.
Why have I asked my electrician I found on Angie.com to bury my pet hamster Nibbles in our yard for me? Because I was so moved by how carefully he buried my electrical wires, I knew I could trust him to bury my sweet Nibbles after his untimely end. Nibbles, gone too soon. May he scurry in peace.
Hey, sorry about your pet, but I just wire stuff.
Nibbles would have loved you like a brother.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now. You call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
To say that the death of Andre Daigle is a very dark chapter certainly in my investigative history is pretty accurate. I don't know that I think maybe a lot of it has to do with the fact that I was so young when I became involved in this case, and it kind of marked me at that moment in time, the things that I had seen, Jackie.
When Michael Phillips and Charles Gervais started this attack on Andre Daigle, it was not successful with the claw hammer. He was still alive. He still had movement in his body. So they moved on to strangulation, and they started with a coat hanger.
Yeah, this is new territory for these two, and you can't forget about Horn either, the woman who lured Andre into the situation in the first place. You begin to consider they're attempting to prove that they're capable of doing this, and I think the level of brutality that this thing extended to goes to the impression they're trying to create. So they've got this man, this poor defenseless man. And by the way, Andre had a family. He had lots of cousins and brothers and sisters and people that truly loved him, and they were very, very tight knit family. And he was just out to have a good time that night, and he just got selected. But these three, this terrible trio, injected into Andre's life this level of horror that I don't think any of us can even begin to comprehend. And what is so terrible about this is that after they had been beating Andre with this hammer, he still probably had some kind of agonal respirations. They had not successfully beaten him enough. And both of these individuals, both Gervais and as well as Phillips, they took turns. They took turns doing this. I guess both of them wanted to get their hands dirty. And they concluded that they still had to do something else because in their eye, he was still alive. So they started out with a hanger. Now, I've seen in the movies, I think, a couple of times where hangers have been utilized in order to kind of be fashioned into almost like a garrote, if you will, where the hands are crossed essentially, and the hanger is put across the anterior aspect of the neck, that's the front of the neck, and then squeezed down. And again, if you don't have a lot of experience doing that sort of thing, and I don't know who out there actually does, it would be very difficult. And they attempted to do this. In later reports, it turned out. And so when that did not work, they actually took an electrical cord that I believe had been attached to a vacuum cleaner, and they wrapped it around his neck, and they used it as ligature and began to choke him out. And then apparently this is what finally, took Andre out. Now, we're talking about injuries. You begin to think about these strikes that you have, this blunt force trauma, which, it's got all kinds of little nuances to it. Well, these strangulation marks do as well. You take a rigid hanger, for instance, and, compared to an electrical cord, a metal coat hanger, or even a wooden coat hanger for that matter, has a level of rigidity to it that, say, a coated electrical cord does not. So when you lay this kind of rigid wire surface or wooden surface across the throat, it's going to leave a very distinctive mark. And it will not continue on around the neck, say like a cord would. So you would have a very specific area, let's say only maybe 4 to 5 inches of that coat hanger is going to involve that surface of the neck, and you'll have what's referred to as focal hemorrhage, and it'll be very linear. It'll match up. It's very simple. It just matches up with the margins, as they say, the borders of the instrument being used. Now, you look at something like a flexible ligature, like an electrical cord, and this can be wrapped all the way around the throat. So you'll have a mark that'll go all the way around, and the hemorrhage might not be as significant as it would be, say, if you had a firm surface, but there still will be hemorrhage. And you can actually, one of the things that we can actually do at autopsy, if we have the ligature, we can actually match that up to a certain degree with the injury, if we get the dimensions of that ligature that's used, say a standard electrical appliance cord, and measure that relative to the flexible ligature mark that's been left behind, and it can be damning evidence when it finally goes to court.
The perpetrators were watching Andre Daigle. He still had a certain type of respiration. What was that, Joe?
Yeah, it's an agonal respiration, and if folks will just think, okay, let me put it to you this way: if you're being attacked, say with like a hammer, blunt force trauma, you're being struck about the head. Well, if those injuries are, say, only located in the front to the top of the head, all right, and you don't injure the backside down what we refer to as kind of the where the autonomic nervous system is kind of housed, kind of our wiring that controls our breathing and our heartbeat and all that sort of stuff. The higher functions of the brain are going to shut down, but yet your heart will still continue to beat. You'll still respire. Now, the quality of life is not going to be there, but that kind of primal thing that's going on, that part of the brain has not been impacted necessarily by the blunt force trauma. So you can actually have someone that has been severely beaten and even have a depressed skull fracture. And, this happens in car accidents all the time, where people will be, life flighted in and they have severe head trauma, but it will not have impacted kind of the brainstem as much. And so they still have the ability to breathe, for instance, but their higher brain functions are not there. And you can still get these kind of movements that come about. And that's probably what they were witnessing at that point in time. They're thinking, oh my God, here we are. We've beaten this guy. We've got a bloody mess on our hands now. How do we go about finishing this guy off? And poor Andre, he's laying there. Can you imagine on that dirty, filthy apartment floor, carpeted surface? There's spots of blood everywhere. This has been going on now from what we were able to tell. This may have gone on, Jackie, for as long as 4 hours. And finally, they decided to end his life at that moment in time. I don't know truly how much mercy was involved in it because it's absolutely horrific, but finally his life ended.
In looking at the damage that was caused to Andre Daigle's skull, being beaten with the hammer, his skull would bend in multiple pieces. In being beaten with the back end, the claw of the hammer, as we pointed out, it would have dug through the skull into the tissue, the brain below. So the damage to the brain and the body systems were irreparable. The likelihood that Andre Daigle would have survived this, even if he hadn't been choked, is pretty slim and would have been a slow, agonizing death.
Yeah, again, if his pain centers were still working, it would have been. And I don't know what his level of awareness was. And hopefully, hope to God that it wasn't there. Even if he had survived, I don't know what the quality of his life would have been at. If they had just said, they just called it at that moment in time, said, we've done wrong here, let's get an ambulance over here. As much trauma as I saw that had been inflicted to Andre's head at that, as a result of those blunt force blows, I don't see how he could have survived. And probably eventually, if they had just left the body alone, he would have finally succumbed because, if nothing else, as a result of this trauma, all the little microvessels around his brain and in even what we call the dura sac that encompasses the brain, those would have ruptured. So blood would have begun to encompass the brain, and eventually the brain literally strangulates because of all of the pressure that's on the brain at that point in time. So you're just leaching out this blood. He probably would have eventually died, but they saw, I think, these agonal respirations. They probably saw some movement, twitching on his part. And they decided to go ahead and essentially choke him out to the point where he couldn't respire any longer, and he finally died.
You can strangle the brain?
Yeah, and it's kind of a euphemistic term that's used by many forensic pathologists. And essentially what it means is that the brain, as a result of lack of oxygenated blood and also the swelling or edema that sets in, essentially shuts down all of the functions of the brain, can no longer process like it should process because it's being inhibited by all of this trauma. So oxygen's not getting to where it needs to get to. And, out of every organ in the body, the brain probably requires more oxygen than any other organ in the body. Okay. The heart and the lungs are essentially there to service the brain so the brain can tell the rest of the body what to do. And I know that's overly simplified, but it is, this is the reason it's called the nerve center. It's kind of our onboard computer that tells our body exactly what to do. Even these things that we're not conscious of, like our heart beating and breathing and, blinking of the eyes and all these sorts of things, down to the smallest little detail in our life. And if that's compromised in any way, you're going to have major problems.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
This Sunday, iHeartRadio brings you live to Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara for the Super Bowl 60 tailgate concert, presented by NetApp. It's the ultimate pregame party, featuring an exclusive performance from Teddy Swims. Your front row experience will be on iHeartRadio stations across the country and the free iHeartRadio app this Sunday at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. Then, after the concert, tune in to the Super Bowl 60 pregame show on NBC.
Now I'd like to introduce you to Meaningful Beauty, the famed skincare brand created by iconic supermodel Cindy Crawford. It's her secret to absolutely gorgeous skin. Meaningful Beauty makes powerful and effective skincare simple, and it's loved by millions of women. It's formulated for all ages and all skin tones and types, and it's designed to work as a complete skincare system, leaving your skin feeling soft, smooth, and nourished. I recommend starting with Cindy's full regimen, which contains all 5 of her best-selling products, including the amazing youth-activating melon serum. This next generation serum has the power of melon leaf stem cell technology. It's melon leaf stem cells encapsulated for freshness and released onto the skin to support a visible reduction in the appearance of wrinkles. With thousands of glowing 5-star reviews, why not give it a try? Subscribe today and you can get the amazing Meaningful Beauty system for just $49.95. That includes our introductory 5-piece system, free gifts, free shipping, and a 60-day money-back guarantee. All of that available at meaningfulbeauty.com.
Why have we asked our contractor we found on Angie.com to be our kids' legal guardian? Because he took such good care when redoing our basement that we knew we could trust him to care for our kids, all 8 of them, should something happen to us.
Are you my dad now?
No, sorry, I do basements. Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
Are you a fraud-paying American? It's a fact that 1 in 4 honest, hard-working, tax-paying Americans has been a victim of identity theft. With LifeLock Identity Theft Protection, though, if your identity is stolen, they fix it, guaranteed, and get you your money back. Last year, the IRS flagged over $16 billion in refunds for identity fraud. That's billions of dollars that could come from your salary, overtime, or second job. But this year, you don't need to stay a victim. LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second for your personal information and alerts you to threats you could easily miss on your own. And if your information does fall into the wrong hands, only LifeLock has U.S.-based restoration specialists who are backed by the $1 Million Protection Package. Because this tax season, fraud-paying American is something no American should have to claim. Visit LifeLock.com/iHeart and save up to 40% your first year. That's 40% off at LifeLock.com/iHeart. Terms apply.
So you want to prove how tough you are. So you have your girlfriend go and essentially attract this young man, unaware of what is waiting for him around the corner. You have her bring him back to the apartment, and then you beat him to death.
That was the next step, Joe, to dispose of the body. Yet we know that it did not happen immediately. How did they dispose of the body, Joe? How do you get rid of a man who's been murdered in an apartment?
Yeah, and we're not talking about some tiny little guy. We're talking about a big, robust man that worked with his hands. Andre was a carpenter, and very good carpenter. You know, he left behind in his wake a tremendous amount of blood. They've been beating on him for a couple of hours, according to reports. He'd bled out on the carpet floor. As a matter of fact, I think that at one point in time, the next day, the landlord, who these three had been dodging for a while because they were being threatened with eviction, actually came up to the apartment on a surprise visit. He noticed red substance on the carpet. They said that they had been painting. They're going to clean that up. And, of course, they dodged him at that moment in time. But, the question is, what happened to Andre? Well, these three, they make the decision that they have there's a homemade sofa already in this little apartment. It's rather robust in size. And they get the idea, until we can decide where to put Andre's body, we're going to put him in the sofa. I'd never encountered this before, but they took Andre's body, took down curtains in the apartment and wrapped his body in these curtains, all right, to try to stem blood flow or the seepage of blood, because he's deceased. There's not going to be blood flow, but it's seepage of blood after death. And then they placed him in the bottom of the sofa. And in order to contain him within it, they took slats of wood and nailed them over the base, over the bottom of the sofa to contain his body in there. And then you know what they did? They went over to the thermostat. I guess they knew enough science to do this. They went over to the thermostat and turned that thermostat down as far as it can go. Now, keep in mind, I lived in New Orleans for a long time. Air conditioners struggle during the summer. And many times it doesn't matter how powerful the air conditioner is. It struggles because it's so bloody hot and humid. So they knew that they were going to have a problem on their hands. And, later it was reported that they said they didn't want his body to stink, as it were. But they knew, as many people do that wind up committing a heinous crime like this involving a body, they know that they need to try to put as much distance between themselves and essentially what turns out to be the fruits of their evil labor.
Several things you mentioned in there, Joe. Louisiana and the heat. How did that play into the disposal of this body, given that wood and fabric, very porous on both counts? So this makeshift coffin would not have been airtight, allowing, depending on where the sofa was disposed of, allowing water, allowing the heat, allowing animals, bugs to contribute to the decomposition. So how would that have all played in together?
Yeah, this is one of the fascinating elements. The homicide itself took place in Jefferson Parish, Louisiana. Remember, Louisiana doesn't have counties, they have parishes. And in the town of Kenner, Louisiana, which is a town within Jefferson Parish. But they decided, Gervais and Phillips, that they're going to take poor Andre's truck. He had a black pickup truck. They're going to take his truck, which, of course, he came home with horn in, downstairs, parked in the parking lot, and put that sofa in the back of that truck. And they're going to travel down the road to another parish. They're going to have to cross, essentially, the spillway, as it's referred to as in New Orleans, the Bon Carré Spillway, along I-10 across the western end of Lake Pontchartrain. Everybody's heard of Lake Pontchartrain. And they have to wind up, and they finally wind up in a place called La Place. And people that are not from South Louisiana, many times they'll call it La Place, and that's the way it's spelled, but it's La Place. And they pulled off of the road. They took an exit, actually exit number 7. And they went down a little dirt road, and as you can imagine, you're adjacent to Lake Pontchartrain. There's swamps all around, and it's very, very swampy. It's very hot. It's very buggy. Okay. And what they did is they took the sofa containing Andre's body. And remember, they wrapped him up inside these curtains and then nailed him essentially. Some people have reported it as being sewn in to the base of this sofa. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And dumped his body out there in those swamps and left him there. And then once they had accomplished that task, they drive off. But keep in mind, bodies in South Louisiana or in Florida, any kind of tropical, subtropical environment, begin to break down very quickly. And, even at a molecular level, decomposition, it's almost impossible to stem decomposition. I don't care where you are. It happens. Cells begin to break down. But it's accelerated in these tropical, subtropical environments, because as we know from science classes when we're young, every experiment that we've ever done in chemistry or physical science always begins with heat, doesn't it? Okay. And so you got a lot of that down there. You got a lot of heat. So the moment that they would have exited that apartment, which remember, they had jacked that temperature all the way down in there to try to get it as cold as possible. Remember, they said they didn't want him to stink. They put him in the back of that truck. And all the while, at a molecular level, at a cellular level, his body's beginning to break down. It's beginning to break down as they're going down the road because of the heat. This is June. It's very hot, trust me. And finally, when they get out there to this location, they put him on the side of the road and leave him there. And all the while, Andre's remains are beginning to break down. All of the evidence that is there on his body is beginning to be compromised to a great degree. Remember when we were talking about his examination by McGarry at the Orleans Parish Coroner's Office, those insults or injuries that he has sustained have begun to change. They change in color, in how they're presenting, and the environment impacts how you wind up examining the body to a great degree. It makes you try to be as careful as you can at autopsy, with evidence and try to document everything, but you have to take even more care because there's kind of this, it's like observing life through a foggy lens, if you will. It's harder to appreciate, and decomposition works that way. It hides things many times. So that's why if you have a decomposing body, as horrible as it is to be around, and trust me, it is, it gets into everything. It impacts the way you conduct yourself in this environment. But it also demands of the individuals participating in this examination to stay longer. It's counterintuitive to everything you want to do. You think about being around a human body to begin with, people that aren't normally used to being around the deceased. You don't want to stay there any longer than you have to. People try to exit as quickly as they can. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. How much more so does that impact you when you're around a body that is decomposed? So when you're in this environment, because the tissue is so compromised, you have to take your time. You have to be very, very careful as you're conducting this examination, because you're only going to get one shot. And I want all of our listeners to remember this. The longer you stay with the body doing this examination, the more careful you are, it lessens the odds that you're going to have to go back and revisit something, because once that body has left the morgue, once the body's off the table, it's put into a body bag and the funeral home takes it away, that body's either cremated or buried. It's gone forever and ever. You can't go back and recapture that moment. So you have to be very, very careful. And that's what they had to do at the Orleans Parish morgue on that day. After all the horror that these three impacted, Andre's family with, the sudden taking of his life and this horrible disposal of his remains with such disrespect. Finally, law enforcement down in South Louisiana put the handcuffs on all three, and all three were eventually convicted and wound up serving life sentences in Louisiana state prisons. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This Sunday, iHeartRadio brings you live to Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara for the Super Bowl 60 tailgate concert, presented by NetApp. It's the ultimate pregame party, featuring an exclusive performance from Teddy Swims. Your front row experience will be on iHeartRadio stations across the country and the free iHeartRadio app this Sunday at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. Then, after the concert, tune in to the Super Bowl 60 pregame show on NBC.
This is Andrea Gunning from Betrayal. Most wellness routines fail somewhere between day one motivation and where did I put that powder? That's where Grüns comes in. Grüns packs over 20 vitamins and minerals, greens, and prebiotics into a snack pack of tiny, delicious gummies. No powders, no pills. Just a simple way to support your gut health, beauty, energy, immunity, recovery, and cognition. Plus, the ingredients in Grüns are backed by over 35,000 research publications. It's a convenient, comprehensive formula designed for real life. Get up to 52% off with the code BETRAYAL at Grüns.co. That's code BETRAYAL at GRUNS.co.
Running my small business was like playing basketball 5-on-1, and I was the one. Now, QuickBooks gives me access to a team of AI agents and trusted experts for the assists I need. Nothing but net.
Outdo it with Intuit QuickBooks. Feature availability varies by product.
Are you a fraud-paying American? 1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has been a victim of identity fraud. With LifeLock, if your identity is stolen, they fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Last year, billions in refunds were stolen. Could be from your salary, overtime, or second job. Gone. But this year, you don't need to stay a victim, because this tax season, fraud-paying American is something no American should have to claim. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/iHeart. Terms apply.
Owning a home is full of surprises. Some wonderful, some not so much. And when something breaks, it can feel like the whole day unravels. That's why HomeServe exists. For as little as $4.99 a month, you'll always have someone to call. A trusted professional ready to help, bringing peace of mind to 4.5 million homeowners nationwide. For plans starting at just $4.99 a month, go to HomeServe.com. That's HomeServe.com. Not available everywhere. Most plans range between $4.99 to $11.99 a month your first year. Terms apply on covered repairs.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.